After the breakup, Daniel's life had become unbearable, a haze of sleepless nights, restless days, and a creeping numbness that dulled every moment. The city, with its endless noise and glaring lights, pressed in on him like a suffocating cage. He needed to escape, to be somewhere no one knew him, somewhere far from her. So he packed a bag, drove hours out of town to the place his grandfather used to talk about, a secluded cabin nestled deep in the forest where even the birds seemed to forget to sing. When Daniel arrived, the late afternoon sun was sinking behind the trees, casting long shadows across the narrow dirt road. The cabin was small, almost forgotten, surrounded by towering pines that blotted out the sky. He stepped out of the car and was struck by the silence. No hum of traffic, no voices, not even the rustle of wind through the leaves. It was absolute stillness that felt almost too perfect. Daniel spent the first few hours in relative peace. He sat on the porch, staring at the trees, letting the quiet wash over him. It was as if the forest itself was absorbing his pain, swallowing the jagged edges of his thoughts. As night fell, he built a small fire and tried to enjoy the solitude. But then, something changed. It was subtle at first. The crackling of the fire seemed to grow softer. The warmth from the flames dulled. He glanced around, realizing how still everything had become again. The oppressive quiet had returned, but this time it wasn't comforting. It was too quiet. Daniel rose to his feet, staring into the woods. The trees loomed, their branches motionless in the stagnant air. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. He laughed at himself. Nerves, he thought. Just nerves after everything he'd been through. Then came the sound. It wasn't a footstep or the snapping of a twig. It wasn't a growl or a rustle. It was a low, barely perceptible hum, almost like a distant ringing in his ears. Daniel froze, listening. It grew louder, but not in the way a noise would approach from the distance. It was inside his head, vibrating through his skull, a relentless tone that he couldn't shake. He stumbled back into the cabin, slamming the door behind him. His heart raced, but the noise followed him, louder now, pressing against the inside of his mind. His hands flew to his ears, but it did nothing to block the sound. It wasn't external. It was within him. Daniel sat on the floor, trying to control his breathing. "It's just stress," he muttered to himself. "You're imagining things." But the hum deepened, pulsating, and with it came a strange sensation, a cold detachment from his surroundings. The cabin seemed to stretch and warp around him, the walls too distant, the air too thin. The floor beneath him felt foreign, like he was floating inches above it, ungrounded in reality. He grabbed his phone, hoping for some connection to the outside world, but the screen flickered and died as soon as he touched it. He threw it aside in frustration, now panting, trapped in this strange isolation. The hum had become a full-throated resonance, filling every inch of his awareness, until it wasn't just a sound, it was a presence. His thoughts blurred. Had he been here a day, a week? Time didn't make sense anymore. The world outside the cabin seemed like a distant memory, and the hum, it was everything now. He realized with a deep, cold clarity that it had been here all along, beneath the surface of his life. The noise he hadn't noticed until he was alone enough to hear it. The silence, he understood too late, wasn't the absence of sound. It was a space, an emptiness waiting to be filled. And in that space, something had found him. He tried to scream, but his voice made no sound. Only the hum, remain.